ton of topics, but before we get to any of them, what did you think of their draft?
It's no doubt, Paul, that they go against the grain and they have their own set of criteria, especially this year. This year, they focused on how ready guys were to play immediately, both physically and mentally mature. And to the mental and character mature, they wanted people who have overcome hardships and have gone through a lot more than just, and sounds like a coronavirus pandemic is pretty awful for the rest of the world. Yes. Personally, these folks that they drafted on Friday, Saturday, they've gone through much more trials in their own lives, raising children, raising siblings by themselves, parents incarcerated. Stephen Sullivan, the 7th-round pick, has an amazing story. I know you and the viewers have probably heard by now. Living under a bridge, parents both jailed, father using cocaine in front of the family. He's somehow going through all that to be an all-state player while sleeping on the floors of trailers and friends' houses, to be an all-state player in high school in Louisiana, getting a scholarship to LSU, first in the family to get a college degree, and now in the NFL. Pete Carroll and John Schneider, Paul, said they sought specifically those kind of people that had tough mental makeup and, in Carroll's words, grit. And they wanted that because this year there's not going to be OTAs and mini camps to ramp up rookies. They're not going to be able to have the hand-holding that usually goes on in May and June and July. These players may not even get into Seahawks headquarters until August because of this pandemic. And they may be only a 3, 4, 5 week ramp up before the season starts. So they wanted players that they thought could come right in and be responsible enough between now and the season to be ready on their own.
They seem to do a lot of work on the offensive line going into the draft. You cover this team on a regular basis for years. Is this the most you've ever seen them designate an effort to a position?
Well, I've never seen a team in any level of sport with 19 offensive linemen and only one quarterback. That's what they had before Sunday when they did release DJ Fluker and Justin Britt. What I see, Paul, is a change now in philosophy. When they brought Mike Solari in a few years ago, it was let's get road grading, run blocking, physical linemen to establish and reestablish our run game that we'd gotten away from. Now they've done that at the expense of pass protection. And Russell Wilson is the most harassed quarterback in the league. They have a $140 million commodity in the prime of his career that spends much of his games getting chased and doing improvisational plays on the fly. They want to get better in pass protection. And in the past week, John Schneider has said repeatedly, we want grown men in front of Russell Wilson and our quarterback. Carroll says so they can get Wilson to do what he does best, which is have time to throw the ball further, deeper down the field. They've got the receivers now in Metcalf and Philip Dorsett as a home run speed threat. They've got the deep guys to throw the ball to. They just don't have the time to throw. So DJ Fluker, run blocker, yes. Pass blocker, no. They think Damian Lewis is a ready-to-play third-round pick from LSU on a national championship team, the best offensive line in major college football. They think he can do the pass blocking better than Fluker. They didn't say that, but that's the implication by cutting Fluker yesterday. They signed B.J. Finney from Pittsburgh in free agency last month. He was a center for a couple games last year when Marquise Pouncey got suspended for the Steelers and played very well at center. He's played mostly guard in his career, but can play center, and so can Joey Hunt, whom they re-signed a couple weeks ago for 1 year. That made Justin Britt expendable at $8.5 million in cap savings coming off reconstructive knee surgery. So their line, yes, they have still 16, 17 players. They're going to end up cutting more in the offensive line. But I see a switch from just let's get run maulers and guys that can put people's face in the ground. Let's got guys that now can pass protect. And I think you're going to see B.J. Finney, Damian Lewis, Jordan Simmons, who's coming off of injury. We haven't seen Phil Haynes at left guard yet. They drafted in the 4th round last year. We're going to see those guys who are cheaper and younger rather than continuity, because really, what good is continuity if you're just there's no use bringing bad back. More of bad is not good, and that's really what they were in pass protection.
How about as far as the running back position? I thought maybe they would take a little bit higher caliber running back at some point because of Penny coming back and Carson coming off of injury, and there's some question marks there in the backfield, huh?
There are. Travis Homer is the only guy now healthy who has played in the NFL game, and he's started one time. and that was last year as a rookie at the end when they had lost their top 3 backs. Chris Carson's coming off the season-ending injury, but Paul, as you know, it was good he didn't need surgery. That should get him back in time for the start of the season. Not so with Rashad Penny, reconstructive knee surgery in December. They don't know when he's coming back. They had a chance to draft Jonathan Taylor in the 2nd round. I thought they were going to do that. I was surprised they didn't. He would have fit them perfectly. A 220-plus pound back, broke the NCAA record for 200-yard rushing games at Wisconsin, still fast, had some pass-catching ability as well. It shows you what they believe in running back they can get in value in later rounds. This is a team that drafted Chris Carson in the 7th round. They gave Thomas Rawls a starting job after Marshawn Lynch left, and Rawls was an undrafted free agent. Rashad Penny is the outlier. They don't normally draft and sign rookies to higher end to running back position. It's the most injured position in football, the shortest shelf life. There is a lot of money or a lot of science that goes into the fact you don't throw a lot of money in high picks at running backs in the league right now.
That all makes sense because you're right. Here they go and get Penny, and unfortunately he gets injured, and the ROI wasn't that great so far. But how about as far as let's just go right to stick with those skill positions. What will they do at backup quarterback? I mean, they've got Jordyn, of course, and that's a thrill for Cougar fans. But
right.
But what will they do there?
You mentioned Anthony Jordyn. It looks like they're going to. He says he's going to sign as an undrafted rookie free agent from Washington State. Paul, I think they want a veteran who, if and when, there will be a time that Russell Wilson's going to miss a game. He will not go through his entire career, especially behind the pass protection and lack of he's gotten without getting injured. They got spooked a few years ago when Trevone Boykin had to play a few series when Russell Wilson got the sprained knee against Miami, the sprained ankle against Miami, and then the sprained knee a couple weeks later. Boykin was an undrafted rookie they didn't think would ever play, especially not then, and they were spooked. The offense just went nowhere. They looked like a different team. They looked like the Buffalo Bills or the Tampa Bay Buccaneers of 1976 without Russell Wilson in that offense. And they, since that time, have gone. Brett Hundley has started games in Green Bay. They signed him and then, of course, let him go after a year, got a comp pick for him. They went with Geno Smith last year, the former Jets starter and Giants starter. I think that's the route he wants to go. Pete Carroll wants an experienced guy. I asked him that specific question on Saturday after the draft, and he joked, well, maybe I'll have to get my arm loose to have a backup to a backup. I don't think Anthony Jordyn is going to be the backup quarterback for the Seahawks this year.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It seems like, they need a veteran quarterback. And will they bring Smith back, you think?
That's a possibility. He's still available. He wants to be here. He wants to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. It looks like there's not a job waiting for him right now. I wouldn't rule out Geno Smith. Somebody who has game planned, started NFL games, gone through the process, they want that, opposed to a Alex Magoo or Trevone Boykin that they've tried in the past.
Okay, so right out of the gate, I thought they raised a few eyebrows with Jordyn Brooks. I mean, fundamentally sound, obviously, and then they come back and they get Darrell Taylor next. But what do you think about their top 2 picks?
Well, it's interesting. Most of the league and most people who observe the draft say need first, and that you use a first-round pick on your most urgent need. The most urgent need for this team, obviously, Paul, is the pass rush. Anyone who's watched this team, I mean, my dog knows they need a better pass rush to get to the Super Bowl. So you think that's where they'll go first round, right? Well, they didn't need linebacker. They've got KJ Wright coming back off for one of his better seasons. I know he's 31, will turn 31 in the last year of his contract, but they have Bobby Wagner still in his all-pros. He's got 3 years, $40 million left on his deal. So they don't need linebacker, but they go get Jordyn Brooks, who is specifically a linebacker in the first round. Why? Because they need a new strong side linebacker. Michael Kendricks is gone. They let him go into unrestricted free agency. He was in that role last year. Cody Barton played some at strong side when Kendricks was hurt last year, but Barton is more of a middle and weak side linebacker. They like how Brooks is wide open, how fast he is in space. In the Big 12, a linebacker is basically like a defensive back oftentimes, how much they throw in that league in college football. And they liked what they saw there. He played 3 years of outside linebacker at Texas Tech, then went in, coincidentally, Bobby Wagner's old coaching staff from Utah State came in to take over at Texas Tech. They moved Brooks to middle linebacker, and that was his only year of doing that. He's not a middle linebacker to me in the NFL. He's an outside in space type of outside linebacker. It wouldn't shock me, Paul, if they asked KJ Wright to go to strong side. He's done it a little bit, and then put Brooks, the faster player, younger player, in more space as the weak side linebacker. That wouldn't surprise me if that happens. I know they brought back Bruce Irvin. He's a strong side linebacker at heart, but he is now going to be turning 33 years old. He's a situational pass rusher on this team, not an every down strong side linebacker. Brooks is going to play, at least they're going to give him the chance to, and I think it could be at weak side linebacker. But then 3 years plus from now, if they wanted to move on from Bobby Wagner, which seems unthinkable right now, they have a guy in Brooks who has played middle linebacker in the past. It's just because it wasn't a need that people were surprised, especially it was seen as a second-round pick anyway. But it just went to show you, Paul, this team, especially in the first and top of the draft, first round, second round, they go for what they think are the best players on the board, not necessarily for need. Now, the second-round pick, Darrell Taylor, is absolutely need. Pass rusher, a prototypical Leo defensive end, weak side defensive end. He's got the 6'4", 260-plus size, the same size Cliff Averill was in this defense. Carroll will put him at weak side, Leo defensive end, and he'll get the first crack at doing that starting whenever they get on the field again.
How about as far as Clowney goes? I mean, it seems like it's just every day is a Clowney update. I read so many different things about it. But by clearing cap space with Britt and Fluker, does that put them back in the running for Clowney, so to speak, maybe for a one-year deal?
Yes, and not just Clowney. And now they're in play for Everson Griffin or anybody else they might want to go get. They could now be in play, Paul, for one of the franchise tag pass rushers like Yannick Ngakoue of Jacksonville. If you trade for one of those, who they are going to look at least asking about the possibility of, then you are assuming that franchise tag value for this year, which is $19 million for 2021 or 2020. They went from $10 million in cap space to $22 million with those two deals on to release Fluker and Britt on Sunday. They just didn't wake up Sunday and say, we're going to cut Fluker and Britt today just because it's Sunday. They did it because, one, they had only $10 million in cap space at the time the draft ended. But two, at Monday at 1 p.m., the conditions changed in the NFL to sign unrestricted free agents. As of Monday, 1 p.m., any unrestricted free agent signed after that point did not count toward the 2021 comp pick formula. John Schneider has a big eye on that, and he has played that calculus quite a bit in the last few years to maximize the number of comp picks the Seahawks get the following year. If he can get a pass rusher now, he's waited this long, if he can get one at this point and not have it count against him in the comp pick formula next year, all the better. And now they've got the money to go out and do that without losing a comp pick by adding one. I think Clowney's coming back on a one-year deal. I think at this point, Paul, he's going to cut his losses with the pandemic, the surgery he had in January, the fact that he could not go to a team facility that were closed to get a physical firsthand, medical people from other teams to see him firsthand to see if he's worth the money he's asking for. Just wipe this clean. Come back to the team he knows best, that he wants to be at, that he knows the system and the coaches, a 4-3 scheme, which he likes better than the 3-4, and try again next year at age 28 in free agency. I think that's what's going to happen.
Well, you know better than most people, that's for sure. I love the Ngakoue deal. I loved it before the draft, and I was hoping they would pull the trigger on something, but that's one I'd like to see.
25 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, I know he would come at a high cost. The Jags would probably want a first-round pick, maybe a player on top of that, as they should. But then you'd be in a situation you're in right now with Clowney again next year, having to re-sign him, and he's trying to get into free agency for the first time. But the attractiveness of him being younger and actually more accomplished in total sacks in the league, I hear you. It's just it'd be a premium that the only other time John Schneider and Pete Carroll have paid that premium on a free agent or a franchise type player was Percy Harvin. And I know he returned a touchdown in the Super Bowl that they won, but that was it. I mean, he punched out Golden Tate the night before that game. So that didn't work out for the money and the draft picks they ended up sending Minnesota. The Clowney deal was an anomaly because they fleeced Bill O'Brien and the Texans, gave a 5th-round pick and 2 guys they were about to cut last year to get Clowney. I see the value in why they would get Ngakoue. I think the price tag might be too steep.
Well, I know I'm going to wrap this up because I know I got you I'm timing this, man, because I know you got to be out of here. But
we're in a pandemic, Paul. We got nowhere to go. I can't even leave my backyard.
yeah, but I know you're Zooming and Skyping all day long, buddy. I know you're, especially the Monday after the weekend draft. So I want to leave this one to you. Like, is there something intriguing on an intriguing topic on this Seahawks team for you?
You know, they won't admit it, Paul, but I think in the back of their minds, they hear a clock ticking on Russell Wilson's prime. I think they know they won't say, yes, we got to get our Super Bowl runs are right now, but they feel it. They've got a $140 million quarterback. They're paying $35+ million to in cap space this year. They need to have the pieces around that to work. They don't need to be a 9-7, 10-6 team that's going to go on the road to Dallas or Philadelphia or Green Bay in the second round and get beaten and not go to the Super Bowl again. And now Russell Wilson's 31 next year. I think they have realized their emphasis on the run. They're going to keep running the ball, but that their emphasis on the run has come at the expense of the best of Russell Wilson. And that's throwing the ball accurately down the field. For as wondrous as he is at escaping rushes and extending plays and sometimes run, he's very underrated good at throwing the ball down the field. I mean, on dimes on the guy's face mask and hands 40, 50 yards down the field, and he just doesn't have a lot of time to do that often. I think Brian Schottenheimer wants to do it more. The Philip Dorsett signing, DK Metcalf drafting him, they want to throw the ball down the field. They've come to realize their system of offensive line and going cheap on it for years has been at the expense of giving him the pass protection to be truly good at what he is, which is throw the ball down the field. If they can somehow get to that better pass protection, even perhaps at the expense of run blocking, I think they realize that they'll get the bust of Russell Wilson and perhaps some home games in the Super Bowl.
You're right. It seems like he never has enough time to do what he does.
I used to do that. I got to where I didn't do it anymore because the results were same every week, Paul. I get in the press box and I put tick marks in the time an average or even above average quarterback would be sacked in a game. And it's double digits every week. Guys that really he should be on the ground, it should be 2nd and 21. And instead it's 2nd and 7 or 2nd and 8 because he dumped it off. It's really incredible that he's thrown for 4,000 yards and 30-plus touchdowns the last couple of years and owns almost all the single-season passing records for this team with no pass blocking. I mean, none. That is substandard, the pass protection he's had. And that's the product of them paying the Legion of Boom, paying Michael Bennett, paying Doug Baldwin, paying Tyler Lockett, paying Russell Wilson the most in the league. You can't pay everybody, so they go cheap on the offensive line, and you get former college basketball players and former defensive tackles. That's what you get. And you get what you pay for when you're on the offensive line on the cheap. We'll see. We'll see if Phil Haynes can be a better pass blocker. We'll see if Damian Lewis, the new guard, third-round pick, can be a better pass blocker. B.J. Finney, who I think might get a chance at center. We'll see if changing 60% of the offensive line makes them better in pass protection. The jury is still out, but I'll tell you, like I said, more of bad is not good, and they have been bad at pass protection.
All right, as I wrap this up, how long have you been with the Tribune?
2014. I first started covering this team, Paul. You remember this, back in 2005 with the Associated Press, their first Super Bowl run, before a lot of people even became 12.
Okay, so one of the great sideshows of going to Seahawks practice, going to Seahawks postgame, listening to you on Zoom during the Seahawks draft is the Gregg Bell questions, and that John Schneider is like, even over the weekend, said, how many questions does this guy get, I think was what he said. But I love the fact that I kind of observe it when I'm there to see how they, you ask them these questions, these pointed questions, and they're really not questions they want to answer all the time. But you do such a great job of it. Does it become a cat and mouse thing, kind of a game with these guys at some point for you?
It helps. I started covering the NFL in 2002. It helps. I've done this a little bit. I have a great rapport with Pete Carroll. He razzes me about the Army. I used to be an Army officer. He razzes me about West Point. We go back and forth quite a bit. And then to the outside, people think that Carroll and Schneider can't stand me because we go back and forth so much. I don't feel, honestly, I'm doing my job, Paul, if they love all the questions I'm asking. My job is to make them a little bit uncomfortable. My job is to ask them questions I think the people want to know. I think that it cuts a little more to the truth of what's going on. And sometimes they don't want to answer that. And they have creative and actually, frankly, polite ways of showing that. But No, I enjoy it. If they were really happy and pat me on top of the head, I'd feel like I wasn't doing my job.
Well, you're doing your job, man.
Well, thanks. The other thing, Paul, is I used to get yelled at by colonels and sergeants major. A football coach doesn't bother me. A GM, I can handle that.
That's a great point, man.
They don't like to hear that either, but it's true. I told them that.
Well, I really appreciate the work you do, and I know a lot of fans do, Greg. So thanks a lot.
The work you do as well. Thank you.
I appreciate
not
that.
just in professional sports that you do in the community. It's a lot more to it than sports for you, and I hats off for you.
Oh, great, man. Well, thank you, and thanks for joining us. I really appreciate your time, and look forward to seeing you in person soon.
Yeah, I hope so. It would be great.